Oh, he was very kind and gentle, wasn't he?
Yeah, he liked to joke, didn't he, with the kids?
Yeah, he used to always sit me on his lap, I remember, on his knee.
He was a man of few words. He was called a spade a spade. He was a genuine man. He never told a lie as far as I knew. Oh, here's Ted here. It's 418 Corporal Edward James Bryans, 15th Battalion. His duty nobly done, ever remembered by his loving wife and family. Very direct person, and anyone that knew him would know that he was that type of man. Yeah, he retired to Monto in about 1953, I think. He loved to get in his bowls and loved doing community work and that sort of thing. The Monto area was opened up for closer settlement. It wasn't a soldier settlement, a lot of people think it was, but anyway, they come up and selected their blocks, and he called the place Avalon. I think it was, Avalon meant place of peace or something like that. And after what he went through, I would think that it would have been a great place for him to be. He did suffer from nightmares for quite a few years. When he first married my mother in 1928, my mother couldn't sleep in the same room with him, but he gradually outgrew that. But in 1951, he was in a bushfire in Monto, and he was on his own, and it brought back all the memories.
The epic feat of the Lewis gunners deserves to be recorded. From the moment they entered Wire Trench, barrage after barrage swept upon them. The guides to this party were either killed, wounded or lost. Tripped by the broken wires lying everywhere along the sap, crawling over dead and wounded, afraid to leave the sap in case they should fail to find their way back to it again. Crouching in the mud and rain for long intervals while Fritz slashed them unmercifully with every form of high explosive. Hearing the incessant calls for stretcher bearers, explosive oaths, the howls of pain, the violent concussion when shells made direct hits. All these created a bedlam which defies description.
He was there for 4 years, which was pretty unusual. He was born on the 3rd of June 1897 at Mitchell, a central western town. His father was a shearer, and a couple of years later he had a sister, Elizabeth, and yes, the marriage faltered, and my grandmother was left with the 2 children. There was no pensions or anything in those days, and I don't think my father ever really got over being fostered out. Him and his mother were a bit estranged, but they had a funny relationship, actually. Yeah, he was fostered out to a German family, a childless family at Laidley. They spoke German amongst themselves, and of course my father picked up a smattering of the language when he was there. He left the farm at Laidley and was working at the Yarraman, and by this time war clouds were gathering, and a lot of other young people thought that they would enlist because Britain was recruiting extra soldiers. He was really 17 years, 4 months, but on his enlistment papers he gave an age of 20 years. He went down to Norwood, and he'd done his basic training there, and before he knew it they were on the ship to go over to Egypt. The usual thing for training, 35 miles walks in the desert sands to condition them for what was to come, and that was the landing at Gallipoli. He was in the 15th Battalion, C Company, I think. When they landed, he said that they were just like sitting ducks in the water. He thought there were better places than being at Gallipoli, yes. Well, my father was one of the soldiers that when the grenades were thrown by the Turks into the trenches, they quickly threw them back at the Turks because an exploding grenade in a trench wasn't a very good thing to have happen. Yeah, you wouldn't hang on to it too long, would you? They were in France, at Western Front, and Poitiers was one of the first places that the troops had to defend. And on that occasion, he was mentioned in dispatches. In the recent operations near Poitiers, he was in charge of a Lewis gun and was noticed for his steadiness and courage. In and out of the line, he is noted for his good work and reliability. Later on in life, when I asked him about it, he said, "You can take that with a grain of salt." She was in the Somme, and because everybody knows the horrible conditions that was there, and he didn't elaborate. He said that there's no words can describe the feeling of being there at that time. This incident happened with my father. He was a scout and set out to find the outposts of the German soldiers, and he heard German voices, and he could understand what they were saying. They were saying how they missed their family and how they wished they were home, and general home life. And he said it was the hardest thing he ever had to do that night was to notify the superiors who would send out a raiding party and eliminate those men. War is pretty heartless. I'd like to tell you about Joe Coogan and Ted. They were sitting on the embankment of the trench in the quiet time of the war, and although they were equipped with gas masks, it was so hot with them on that they took them off, and Joe was, the wind must have been blowing his way because he suffered terribly from burnt lungs for the rest of his short life. My father was lucky, he didn't have any effects. So, yeah, Lady Luck seemed to follow Ted around a bit. The powers that be came to the conclusion that the soldiers at the Western Front needed relieving. They brought in new recruits, and there were 3,000 soldiers to go back to Australia. The ship that we think that my father boarded was the Kaiser Hind. They were in the Mediterranean, and a German U-boat fired torpedoes. The first three missed, but the fourth one hit the ship and badly dented the Kaiser Hind. But from then on, they had a trouble-free voyage to Australia. I appreciate him all the more from when I found out what he'd been through. Young people can be pretty hard-hearted at times, I think, because from what I can gather, most soldiers didn't relate what they went through, and it's only in later years that you find out these things, and it's really too late to say, "Oh, sorry, Dad."